the invisible hands that shape our souls. Have you ever felt something was wrong, not just wrong on the surface, but deep within you, as if the world around you and your inner self were out of sync? It's a feeling like being trapped in a fog, where every step feels heavier, and you can't quite explain why. You might think it's just a bad day, stress, or even exhaustion, but what if I told you it could be something far deeper, something unseen, something spiritual? We often underestimate the spiritual realm. We forget that beyond what we can touch and see, there's a whole other dimension influencing our thoughts, emotions, and even the paths we take. When negative spiritual attacks occur, they're not always obvious. They don't announce themselves with flashing lights or dramatic signs. Instead, they creep in quietly, weaving into the fabric of our lives until we barely recognize their presence. Let's dive into the first strange sign. Have you ever noticed that your inner voice becomes unusually cruel? I'm not talking about normal self-doubt here. I'm talking about hearing a voice so sharp, so relentless, that it begins to wear you down. You might suddenly feel unworthy, unloved, or incapable, even if there's no logical reason behind it. It's as though a shadowy presence manipulates your thoughts, amplifying every fear you've ever had. Why does this happen? Negative spiritual forces thrive on your weakness. They aim to isolate you, to make you question your purpose, your identity, and even your faith. But here's the thing: we are often complicit in their work. Think about it. When was the last time you silenced your mind long enough to question these thoughts? Or are you allowing them to take root without resistance? This leads us to a deep question: who is really in control of your inner dialogue? Is it you, or are you unknowingly letting something else steer your thoughts?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lessons.
Another weird sign is an overwhelming sense of fear or dread that seems to come out of nowhere. It's not tied to any specific event or circumstance. You could be sitting in your room, everything seemingly fine, and yet this dark cloud of anxiety washes over you, making your skin crawl. Fear is one of the most effective tools of negative spiritual forces. It paralyzes you, blinds you to hope, and keeps you from stepping into your purpose. But fear also has a strange way of hiding in plain sight. Sometimes it disguises itself as hyperproductivity, where you're constantly moving, constantly doing, but deep down, you're running from something. Other times it shows up as procrastination, where you avoid the things you know you need to do because the weight of the unknown feels unbearable. Ask yourself this: what am I truly afraid of? And is this fear even mine, or is it being planted by something external? Now let's talk about relationships. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where every connection in your life feels strained? People misunderstand you, small arguments turn into big fights, or you feel an inexplicable distance growing between you and those you love. This isn't always a coincidence. Negative spiritual attacks often target our relationships because they know how vital relationships are to our spiritual well-being. Think about it: when we're isolated, we become easier to manipulate. We lose our support systems, our accountability, and we begin to spiral inward. What's worse is that these attacks can be so subtle that we don't even notice them happening. Maybe it starts with a small annoyance: you feel irritated by a friend's comment or a partner's habit. But instead of addressing it with grace, the irritation festers, turning into resentment. What if I told you that this wasn't entirely your doing? That there could be an unseen force fanning the flames of discord in your life? Take a moment to reflect: are the conflicts in your life a reflection of who you are, Or could they be signs of something trying to pull you away from peace? Negative spiritual attacks love to work in the background, creating chaos while you're too distracted to notice. And one of their favorite tools: confusion. This brings us to another sign you feel lost, unsure of your direction, even when you thought you knew where you were going. It's not just indecision, it's a deep sense of being unmoored, as if the compass guiding your life has suddenly stopped working. In these moments, it's easy to spiral. You start second-guessing every choice, wondering if you're on the right path or if you've made a terrible mistake. This confusion isn't random, it's intentional. Negative spiritual forces thrive when we're uncertain, because uncertainty breeds fear, and fear breeds control. But here's the paradox: sometimes the confusion is a sign that you're on the verge of a breakthrough. Darkness often fights hardest when the light is about to shine the brightest. So let me ask you, when you feel lost, do you stop and seek clarity, or do you let the fog consume you? Do you have the courage to pause and listen to what your spirit is trying to tell you? Finally, let's touch on energy. Have you ever felt drained for no apparent reason, as if something is siphoning your strength? This isn't just physical exhaustion, it's a spiritual depletion. You might find it harder to pray, meditate, or even focus on simple tasks. It feels like your energy is being stolen, leaving you too tired to fight back. This is no accident. Negative spiritual forces target your energy because they know that a weary soul is easier to manipulate. They want you to give up, to stop fighting, to stop believing. But here's the truth: you are stronger than you think. Your spirit is resilient, but it requires nurturing. Are you taking the time to recharge, or are you letting the attacks wear you down? How negative spiritual attacks manipulate your reality. Let's get real for a second. Have you ever felt like life was playing tricks on you? Like no matter how much you try, things just don't add up. You're putting in the effort, making the plans, doing what you're supposed to do, but everything feels off. It's as though the world is tilted just enough to throw you off balance. This isn't just bad luck or coincidence, it's a sign of something deeper. Negative spiritual attacks have a way of distorting reality. They work subtly, twisting your perception until you start doubting everything you know to be true. They make you question your decisions, your instincts, even the people around you. One of the weirdest signs of this is when things that once brought you joy suddenly feel meaningless. Think about this. Have you ever woken up one day and felt disconnected from the things you used to love? Maybe it's a hobby, a goal you've been working toward, or even the people in your life. It's not that anything has changed on the surface, it's more like a numbness that creeps in, stealing your passion without you even noticing. Why does this happen? Because when you're under attack, the goal isn't just to stop you, it's to drain you of your purpose. Here's the tricky part: when this happens, it's easy to think the problem is you. You start wondering if you're just lazy, unmotivated, or even broken. But what if the problem isn't internal? What if something external is working against you, pulling the strings to keep you stuck? Another way these attacks manipulate reality is through distraction. Ever notice how, just when you're about to make progress, something completely unrelated comes crashing into your life? It could be a random crisis, a sudden wave of doubt, or even an opportunity that seems too good to pass up. At first, you might not see it as a problem. But over time, you realize these distractions have pulled you so far off course that you barely recognize where you are anymore. Here's the kicker: not all distractions are bad things. Sometimes they're disguised as something positive, like a new relationship, a job offer, or an exciting project. But if these things pull you away from what you're truly meant to be doing, they become tools for attack. The question is, are you able to tell the difference? Can you see when something is leading you astray, even if it looks like a blessing on the surface? And then there's the emotional roller coaster. When you're under attack, your emotions can feel completely out of control. One moment you're fine. The next you're overwhelmed by anger, sadness, or anxiety that seems to come from nowhere. It's like your emotions are being hijacked, turned against you to keep you in a constant state of turmoil. Here's the thing about emotions: they're powerful. They can drive us to create, to connect, to move forward. But they can also be used as weapons when we're not careful. Negative spiritual forces know this, and they'll use your emotions against you every chance they get. They'll amplify your fears, magnify your insecurities, and push you toward choices you wouldn't normally make. But have you ever stopped to think about what's fueling these emotions? Are they coming from a genuine place, or are they being manipulated by something outside of you? And more importantly, do you know how to take back control? Let's talk about another bizarre sign: a sudden string of coincidences that seem designed to knock you down. Maybe you lose your job, your car breaks down, and your relationships start falling apart all within the same week. It's easy to write these things off as bad luck, but what if they're not? What if these so-called coincidences are actually orchestrated to break your spirit? The goal here isn't just to make your life harder. It's to wear you down so that you stop fighting. It's to make you feel like the universe is against you, so you give up on the things that matter most. But here's the twist: these attacks can also be a sign that you're on the right path. Think about it. Why would something go to such great lengths to stop you if you weren't on the verge of something important? And that brings us to a deeper question: when everything seems to be falling apart, do you see it as a reason to quit, or as proof that you're getting closer to something bigger? Another strange sign is when you start noticing patterns. Maybe they show up in your dreams, in the people you meet, or even in the way events unfold in your life. These patterns can be subtle, but they're almost always unsettling. It's like the same message keeps showing up over and over again, but instead of clarity, it brings confusion. But here's the thing about physical symptoms: they're also a wake-up call. They're your body's way of telling you that something isn't right, that you need to pay attention. The real challenge is figuring out what to do about it. Are you taking care of yourself, or are you letting the attacks win by ignoring your own needs? And finally, let's talk about the weirdest sign of all: a sense of being watched. This one is hard to describe, but if you've experienced it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a feeling that someone or something is observing you, even when you're alone. It's not just paranoia, it's a deep, unsettling awareness that you're not as alone as you think. Why does this happen? Because negative spiritual forces want you to feel vulnerable. They want you to feel exposed, as though you're under constant scrutiny. It's a way to keep you on edge, to make you second-guess your every move. But here's the thing: that feeling of being watched can also be a reminder. A reminder that you're not alone, that there's more to this life than what you can see, and that you have the strength to face whatever comes your way. How to defend yourself against spiritual attacks and reclaim your power. Let's be honest: fighting against something you can't see feels impossible. How do you defend yourself when the attacks are subtle and invisible? How do you get back your peace when the chaos seems to live in your mind, your emotions, and even your body? The truth is, The fight is real, but it's not impossible. The first step is recognizing that you're not powerless. Negative spiritual attacks feed off one thing more than anything else: your belief that you can't do anything about them. It starts with awareness. Think about how much noise fills your life every day. Social media, work, family issues, endless scrolling on your phone. It's all designed to keep you distracted. And the more distracted you are, the easier it is for these attacks to slip in unnoticed. But when you stop and pay attention, when you really notice what's happening in your life, you begin to see the patterns. You begin to see where the cracks are and where the attacks are hitting you hardest. Here's the thing: you can't fight what you don't understand. That voice in your head that keeps telling you you're not good enough, whose voice is it? That fear that keeps you stuck, that heaviness that follows you around, where is it really coming from? The moment you start asking these questions, you're already breaking the power these attacks have over you. Because now you're not just reacting, you're taking control. One of the most effective ways to fight back is through alignment. When your mind, body, and spirit are in sync, it's like creating an impenetrable shield around yourself. But when one part is out of balance, it leaves you vulnerable. Think about it. How often do you ignore your physical health because you're too busy? How often do you let toxic thoughts run unchecked in your mind? How often do you neglect your spiritual practices because you're too tired or too busy? This isn't about being perfect. It's about being intentional. Every time you choose to take care of your body, every time you redirect a negative thought, every time you take a moment to breathe and reconnect with yourself, you're weakening the grip of these attacks. It's not about making huge, dramatic changes overnight. It's about taking small, consistent actions every day that build your strength from the inside out. Let's talk about boundaries. Negative spiritual attacks often come through the people and environments around you. That friend who constantly drains your energy, that job that leaves you feeling empty, that habit that keeps pulling you into a dark place. These are all entry points for attacks. But here's the thing: you have the power to close those doors. It's not easy. Saying no to people, walking away from toxic situations, or changing habits can feel overwhelming. But every time you choose to protect your energy, you're taking back control. You're sending a message that you won't be an easy target. The more you stand your ground, the harder it becomes for these attacks to take hold. And then there's forgiveness. This is one of the hardest but most powerful tools you have. Holding on to anger, resentment, or bitterness is like leaving a door wide open for negative forces to walk right in. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting people off the hook for what they've done. It means freeing yourself from the weight of their actions. It means refusing to let their choices control your life any longer. Here's the thing about forgiveness: it's not for them, it's for you. Every time you let go of the pain and choose peace instead, you're taking back your power. You're closing a door that these attacks can no longer use to get to you. Now let's talk about something practical: rituals. Not in the sense of something mystical or complicated, but in the sense of creating consistent habits that ground you and protect your energy. Maybe it's meditating for 5 minutes every morning, journaling before bed, or even just taking a few deep breaths when you feel overwhelmed. These small actions create a space of calm and clarity where negative forces can't thrive. Another powerful tool is gratitude. It sounds cliché, but gratitude is like a weapon against darkness. When you focus on what's good in your life, even if it's just one small thing, you're shifting your energy. You're choosing to see the light instead of the shadows. And the more you do this, the harder it becomes for negativity to take hold. But gratitude isn't just about listing things you're thankful for. It's about feeling it. It's about letting that sense of appreciation fill you up and push out anything that doesn't belong. It's about reminding yourself that no matter how hard things get, there's always something worth fighting for. Now, let's address fear. Fear is one of the most effective weapons used against you. It's paralyzing. It makes you second-guess yourself. It keeps you stuck in a cycle of inaction. But here's what most people don't realize: fear only has as much power as you give it. The next time fear shows up, instead of running from it, face it, name it, call it out for what it is. Because the moment you bring fear into the light, it starts to lose its grip. It feeds on secrecy and avoidance, but when you confront it head-on, it begins to shrink. Another way to fight back is through connection. Isolation is one of the first signs of an attack, and it's also one of the most dangerous. When you're alone, it's easy to feel like you're the only one going through this. But the truth is, you're not. Reaching out to others, whether it's friends, family, or a spiritual community, creates a network of support that makes it harder for these attacks to take hold.